Hello, everybody. Welcome back. On this week's episode, How to DM for 2024 D&D Rogue by me, of course. And to be honest, the way I wrote this, if you are a rogue, this is also for you. This will be covering between levels 1 to 5, but pretty much that's all the important levels for what a rogue's going to do, because after that, a rogue's just going to get more consistent at their practices. Nothing majorly game changing is going to happen beyond that point. Alright, so what the rogue player wants. When picking a rogue as their class option, they normally tend to want one or more of these things within the game. First one being, they want to do a lot of damage, surprising their enemies before they even realize it. Number two, they want to be stealthy, elusive figures with mysteriously hiding within the shadows. Number three, they want to be skilled experts in their crafts and trades. Number four, they want to have an easy and fun play class. And number five, they want to look cool. So find out what your rogue wants out of these things. This is going to be like 90% of why people tend to choose rogues. So just ask your players, like, what do they want to see? What do they want to do in the game that you're running? And just have a general conversation. But this is a majority of what the rogue player is going to want. So, at level 1, while building a rogue, normally they're going to have a fairly low strength, going to be a dumb stat of 8. This is assuming point buy, but strength will be the lowest score. Dexterity will be their highest score. Potential, we'll get into that later. Normally trying to aim at a 17 for a +3, and to add to that 17 later on down the line. Constitution. Rogues want a good constitution. They might settle for a 14. Some might go higher for a 16. It's up to what your player decides. But constitution is definitely recommended as a second. The other second I recommend is intelligence. Rogues have intelligence saving throws, as well as two of their subclasses rely on having a good enough intelligence to function. So that's normally a good second alternative. Wisdom and charisma, unfortunately, they don't have much in the way of building towards them, so they're going to be fairly low. I tend to find that for rogues, wisdom and getting those other perception proficiencies are way better than what the charisma is going to do for you, but it doesn't really matter. And if you're not having a rogue build that involves intelligence, maybe you might increase one of these two. But this is generally how a rogue's stat block is going to look. They have proficiencies in dex saving throws. This is really important. A lot of things in the game requires a dex save and intelligence saves. Not as common, but normally when they make them, they're fairly important to make. Now we have hit points. Rogues have a d8 in hit die. This will give them the average hit points. Not as good for Marshall. Marshall normally wants a d10 or the d12s, but rogues will have to settle with the d8. Normally at level 1 they'll have 8 hit points. Sorry, not 8, but 10 hit points given the con score. However, it's their AC that's a little bit more of a trouble. So leather armor will give them 11 base, and then plus a dexterity, which will be 3, and that'll get them up to 14 to start off with. Not the best for someone who wants to be in the front line all the time, but maybe a rogue does not, so that this will suffice. The problem here with the armor is that there's only one better armor level, and that is studded leather armor, which just gives them a base 12. From here on out, it's just their dex score that's going to be increasing their armor class. So it'll cap out at about 12 plus 5, 17. Without magical enhancements to their AC. Skill proficiencies. Rogues have a lot, and they get to 4 of them. I should have mentioned that. The common ones to pick are Stealth and Sleight of Hand. And I forgot to put Thieves' Tools on this list. Thieves' Tools as well. That's a mistake. So, Sleight of Hand, Stealth, Thieves' Tools. In addition, there are some good pickups like Perception, Investigation, Deception, and Acrobatics. And then Persuasion, Insight, Intimidation if you're building more for the Wisdom and Charisma. But Athletics is probably going to be super low unless you really need to cover that up. But I wouldn't recommend. As proficiencies, you'll have access to all simple weapons, which you might want to stay clear of. Unfortunately, the damage numbers aren't as high. The only one that I would really look at is the dagger, because it can be thrown. Rapiers, which are fine. Scimitars and short swords are going to be your go-to for your melee weapons. And then hand crossbows are going to be your go-to for ranged weapons. They are quite expensive, though. We'll get into that as well. And then you also have proficiencies in Thieves' Tools, which you're going to want, and light armor, which we've already equipped in. Another thing, too, is you're going to get an origin feat from your background. The most recommended at the moment is Alert. It just gives you a +3 initiative, as well as you can swap initiative places with another ally of your choice. That's going to be just the classic tried and true. It comes from the criminal background, I want to say, as well, so all good there. But there are some other pickups which I think go somewhat underrated. We're going to start off with Lucky. Luck points got nerfed already and how we use them. They're now the old Heroic Inspiration, where you have to use them before the roll to gain advantage, while the new inspiration system, Heroic Inspiration, is now after the roll is cast, you can get to use them. So it's not as powerful, and you start off with less, you get your proficiency bonus for the advantage. So it'll scale up in levels, which is good. Another one is Magic Initiate for some nice little pickups, mostly in the Wizard domain. And that is for cantrips like, cantrips for True Strike. That could be really good for the Rogue, especially if you're building towards Intelligence. And pickups like Find Familiar, which are great ways to give yourself advantage. Then there's Skilled and Crafter. I'm going to go for Skilled first. This just gives just more general skill proficiencies you can add to yourself, which ties into your later levels and even stuff like expertise down below. I don't think it's a bad pickup. It's not as good as the other ones. And same thing for Crafter, which will make item buying 25% cheaper, as well as it'll make it easier for you to gain multiple cool proficiencies to craft said items. I recommend this one, I think, for the Thief Rogue, especially since they want to use a lot of items on them. So I think that's a sneaky pickup. I don't think it's a bad feat for most classes. I think Rogue can actually take advantage of it. So Expertise. This you also get at level 1 and allows you to double your skill proficiency in 2 skills. So just like I mentioned earlier, Sleight of Hand, Thieves' Tools, Stealth are the main ones you want to do. Deception, Investigation, or Perception are some nice off-pick options. But I definitely will hard recommend Stealth, especially with the new stealth rules. Another thing they gain at level 1 still is Thieves' Cant. This is a unique rogue language that is normally spoken in gestures and phrases, and undetectable to the naked ear. And you get an additional language, which should be nice. Thieves' Cant. This is a nice, really roleplay feature. And then finally, you get 2 weapon masteries. So you have to choose the weapons, and then they give you the mastery when you use that weapon. My recommendation is get 1 Nick weapon and 1 Vex weapon. If you're doing melee, get a scimitar, so you can get Nick, and if you're doing, and then get the Vex for the short sword. If you're doing range, the Vex for the hand crossbow works, and then probably a Nick for the dagger, if you want to throw that at any point. No, I forgot that was an option during some of my DPS. I think I have to rework some of my DPS numbers because I forgot throwing the dagger is fairly good. With your not counting as a bonus action. Okay. So what Nick does is allows you, normally when you take an attack and with a light weapon and you were to bonus action attack with another light weapon, it would take your bonus action. Now, the Nick property, it's just part of the main attack action, allowing you to do both swings with only one action. Vex is very good, and it gives your next attack advantage, which would proc your sneak attack. What is sneak attack? Bread and butter. Sneak attack is an extra d6 of damage once per turn on any weapon attack, as long as you meet these requirements. If you're using finesse or ranged weapons, which all those listed before were, you don't have disadvantage on the attack roll. That is important. Keep that in mind. An advantage and disadvantage cancel each other out, but it still counts as a disadvantage. You have advantage on the attack roll, or alternatively, one of your allies is within 5 feet of the target. So just like I want to repeat, if you have advantage and disadvantage, it comes out in neutral. However, if there's also an ally within 5 feet, you still have disadvantage, and you will not gain the benefits of sneak attack. Okay. This also scales every odd rogue level, scaling all the way at up to 10d6 at level 19 and 20. This is going to be a majority of where your damage is coming from, and you're going to try and proc this every single turn as best as you can as a rogue. All right, we're going to go into a little bit of a roleplay scenario using some of these abilities. So, the party is tasked with finding a goblin outpost and taking care of them for the village who are tired of being pillaged. Currently, they have captured a goblin, but all attempts of interrogation have failed. The party's rogue decides to take a crack at it and communicates in thieves' cant. As the town guards looks them over, they end up bargaining a deal. If the rogue can break the goblin out of prison, she'll tell her everything. Thus, late at night, with her expert stealth, she breaks in using her thieves' tools, unlocking the jail doors, but not freeing her until she rats out her goblin warband. The little one spills the beans for her freedom. So what is happening here? Thieves' cant, again, the language that is spoken in gestures and hidden messaging, can be spoken often in public places to communicate secret meanings or messages. So that can go hidden view from the party and the public's eye. Expertise. The expertise will give the rogue a better shot at succeeding on stealth rolls, which is what is chosen. The stealth roll DC right now is at a flat 15 DC for a minimum. So our rogue is going to probably make a 10 on average, plus 7, thanks to the expertise, giving us a nice boost to her stealth, which will give us an average of about 17, which is a success. So she breaks in with a lockpick DC. This is probably a low DC that you'll get 12 at like level 1. Another 17, taking the average. And then sometimes a rogue might not always act. Sometimes a rogue will act morally gray to accomplish a goal, such as this action. As long as it's not PvP, most of what a rogue can do, even though they're not legal, can normally gel along with the rest of the party. Make sure no player versus player mentality is involved. Right, on to combat. The party's rogue hears 4 goblins coming out from the cave, ready to raid the village yet again. The rogue hides behind a tree, becoming invisible to her enemies. The party is ready to ambush the goblins on her mark. She engages the goblins on her initiative. She draws her short bow, releasing an arrow into the goblin's head. The fight continues on. On her next turn, she sees her ally, the fighter, going toe-to-toe with their adversarial boss. She backs him up, flanking the goblin boss, backstabbing him with the short sword, vexing them, and then nicking them with her scimitar. The goblin boss has fallen, and the party are celebrated as heroes as they return. So again, what is actually happening here? Firstly, before combat starts, the rogue wants to make the hide action. Again, DC 15, standard 17 on average. Alright, she passes. Then she becomes invisible. The invisible is now a condition, which grants you advantage on your next attack, disadvantage for the enemy's attacks onto you, even if they can see you, as well as you become untargetable until they can beat your stealth DC as an action to search. So they just flat out use her passive perception because they don't even know that she's there. So then she rolls initiative. She has the alert feat, so she has that with advantage because of being hidden. There was some math on this. Advantage averages out to an increase in 4.3. Math is weird. Anyway, so 14. Plus 3 from her dex, plus 2 from alert. Because alert goes off of your proficiency bonus when giving you initiative rolls. So a 19. She goes for first, surprise. So she releases her short bow from stealth, and she makes an attack roll, again advantage because she's stealthed. Oh, sorry. They have the advantage because they surprise their enemies. That is my apologies. Invisibility doesn't do that, it's because they surprise their enemies by attacking first. Anyways, we have advantage from the invisible condition. Average 19 to hit. And then damage. So the short bow's damage is a d6, plus her dexterity, a 3, plus the sneak attack, another d6, which will average out to 10 damage. The fight continues on. And then flanking to gain another source of sneak attack. So attack roll, this time not advantage, so it's just a base 10, 15, that'll hit the goblin. And then the same outcome of damage of 10. The next thing that's important will be a vex attack, which means her next attack on her turn will be at advantage. And then she takes the nick action with the scimitar and rolls it with advantage, gaining a 19, a higher chance at hit, for a measly 4 damage, but it was a more guaranteed 4 damage thanks to the Vec. And technically, if she needed to dash on her turn, she could have done that, and that's what the nick property would have helped. And the party will level up. So, what do rogues gain at level 2 and level 3? Firstly, and most importantly, is cunning action. This will grant. Oh yeah, they couldn't dash before this. That's why I didn't mention it there. So what they can do now with their bonus action, is dash, disengage, or hide. Dashing and hiding are going to be what's used most. Dashing to get closer to get to a certain position more easily, or hiding to try and gain sources of advantage and untargetability. Disengage will be used somewhat, but not every time on good positioning from the player's point. So yes, as I mentioned earlier, hiding, stealth check, either heavily obscured, like fog or darkness, behind 3/4 cover or total cover, and the important thing is out of enemy's line of sight. For me, this is more so is the enemy still focused on your location, or are there more of your allies there to distract them that they would like rather turn their head towards? Because the rogue can probably say out of sight from a person's direct view. And then nextly, they get steady aim, so it gives you advantage on your next attack roll. But this is a bonus action. I forgot to mention that. It gives you advantage on your next attack roll. However, your speed is 0, and you can't have moved on your full turn. So you're spending all 3 of your available actions, your movement, your bonus action, your action, just to give yourself advantage on your next attack roll. So here are the 3 subclasses that rogues get. Sorry, the 4 subclasses rogues get. Whoops, my bad. Arcane Trickster, which is a spellcaster and mage hand manipulator. The Assassin, which is a stalker and liar. The Soul Knife, which is a psionic and blade bearer. And finally, the Thief, which is a kleptomaniac and item user. So, this is not really covering rogues that much in combat, but what equipment they can buy to make that combat go easier. So, at about level 2, they might gain, a common player will gain about 100 gold pieces, and they can be used that to upgrade armor equipment. So, if our rogue wants, she can be more of a ranged fighter and pick up a hand crossbow, which is a one-handed light, not light weapon, no, it is a light weapon. No, it's not a light weapon. It's only one-handed weapon. Oops. But it's way easier to do other stuff with a free hand, or even hold a second crossbow. No, sorry, it is a light weapon. It's on the Nick property. What am I saying? Yeah, I said so here. It's a light weapon. A nice light weapon for her to... Yeah. Babbling. Okay. So, or if she wants to be more defensive, she can pick up that 30 level armor, which will give her a +1 to her AC. But also, in addition, you can start buying items such as oils, flasks of acid, alchemist fire, grappling hooks, healing potions, which are kind of costly but maybe valuable at this level. Ball bearings, caltrops, grappling hooks. I mentioned that twice, I think. Okay, I did. Hunting traps, manacles, and other such goodies that you can disable your enemies with. So now during combat, you want to use your cunning action to free up what her main action would be for hit and run attacks, or just using items to interrupt her foes. So yeah, those strategies of hiding in and out of cover work great for cunning action, dashing to obscure locations, or just freeing up your main action to be elusive, but also causing some mayhem on the battlefield. At level 3, you'll probably get another 100 gold pieces, where you can buy to pick up the rest of the stuff, or even like grab a second hand crossbow, for example. So, the Arcane Trickster. It has its main feature of spellcasting, which you can get from the wizard spell list. You start off with 4th level skills, and by level, now it's 18 or 19, you'll go up to 4th level. So you have a very slow scaling with your spell progression. You'll start off with 2 spell slots, and you'll use intelligence as your wisdom ability. It's your spellcasting ability. Well, as your spellcasting ability. Why did I say wisdom? Whenever you gain a rogue level, you can replace 1 spell from your list. Every spell is known. Now, you cast a spell. You must have a free hand holding an arcane focus. This could be anywhere from a little piece, but also weapons such as rods and staffs count as arcane focuses. Wands, rods, or staffs. Yeah. I would pay attention to the staff one. That's when you might want to. Sorry, the wand one. That's when you're probably looking towards for this class. But wands can be harder to come by, given they're a little bit more powerful on average. You might not find one very soon in your adventuring days. Or you can just do basic material component pouch. Oops, I don't see why you would want to rather than these options. So at the start you gain 3 cantrips, Mage Hand is a must, and 2 others, True Strike is highly recommended. Highly recommend True Strike. Actually I should talk about why. So True Strike replaces your dexterity or strength weapon attack with your spellcasting modifier, for this case intelligence. So it'll use our intelligence for the attack and for the damage. However, it also scales on its own, and it'll gain a d6 at level 5, another d6 at level 11, and then another d6 at level 17. As a rogue, you only ever get the one attack as an action, so this will make that attack really count with True Strike. And then spells prepared, so some good ones. I also forgot to put one that I use later on in here. Find Familiar is a great one and a must, I would say, to gain sources of advantage. Identify is a good pickup as a ritual. The Find is also a ritual. Magic Missile is pretty solid normally. Shield. I think it's great and fantastic. I guess you don't have as much resources as you would as a normal spellcaster. I still would recommend it. In addition, I actually forgot to, if you really want a little bit higher AC, you can always get Mage Armor, which will put it at a base 13 plus dex, and then you could also get Witch Bolt for damage, and repetitive damage at that. I'm going to be honest, I should have probably added that to the list, but I'm saying it now. And then your other ability, which is Mage Hand's, the domain, whatever, I can't pronounce it. So Mage Hand is now a bonus action. It is also invisible. That is important that it's invisible. And you can make sleight of hand checks with it. I don't know why there's a bracket there. So yeah, this turns Mage Hand up the wazoo, meaning it's great to use in combat if you're trying to sable the enemy. So here's what an Arcane Trickster can do in combat. In the midst of a seafaring combat, the Arcane Trickster extends their mage hand to steal the treasure map from their black-flagged foes. With the other hand, they cast True Strike on his crossbow, aiming in at the undead swashbuckler before retreating away. Unfortunately, he made quite the target for himself, as Blackbeard orders a barrage of arrows, bullets, and axes fly his way. Luckily, the Arcane Trickster casts his shield to block most of that gunfire. So what is happening here? First, there's probably going to be a change to the Trickster's stats a little bit, where they're going to lower their dexterity and swap it out for a better intelligence, and they're going to have to unfortunately drop wisdom for this to work properly. So in the midst of combat, they use Mage Hand as a bonus action to steal so it's the pirate's passive perception of 10 versus their sleight of hand roll with advantage because the hand is invisible. So remember, the hand is invisible, it has advantage, but it doesn't make attack rolls. They lose said invisibility. So Arcane Trickster yoinks it off of the pirate's body. And then with his main action, he casts True Strike, which also deals radiant damage. So that's why I used an undead zombie, for example, so it can easily fell that creature type. So yeah, or just a regular tackle. I should have mentioned, I forgot here, but I mentioned it later on, is that Find Familiar, what it could have done on the Familiar's turn is use the help action on that zombie perchance, and then giving you advantage so you can add your sneak attack to this damage roll. So that's a mistake on my bad. But yeah, 15 average to hit, that'll hit zombie, 7 radiant. And then finally, shields, which is why it's good. You'll probably still have an AC about 14 at this level. Maybe if you wanted to bite, maybe you would have bite it. But a +5 for the shield for the whole turn, giving you 19, is going to be very elusive, which is really why I recommend shields as an option. So the assassin, more subtle than the other rogues. You have assassinate, which gives you advantage on initiative rolls. Just flat out, you no longer need to surprise your enemies. During the first round of combat on each of your turn, you have advantage on attack rolls as well. So that'll proc sneak attack against any creature that hasn't taken its turn yet. Normally, you're going to be going first. I think flat out, that's what's expected to happen. If your sneak attack hits any target during this round, the target deals extra damage equal to your rogue level. This is not a lot of damage. Right now it's 3 damage. It'll only scale up to 20, which is not a lot. It's the advantage and the advantage on attack initiative, that's more important. And then the assassin's tools, which got an upgrade from the player's handbook. You get the disguise kit, which allows you to make deception checks. Makes a deception check DC 10 to put makeup on yourself to make you look like someone else, which will give you advantage on deception checks going forward to pretending to be that person. Actually, not just deception checks. Any charisma roll, I want to say. And then the poisonous kit, which is somewhat good. It'll make poisons, which costs about 50 GP to make. There'll be a bonus action on your turn to dip coat a melee weapon in the poison, which is just a D4, or 3 ammunitions, whether it be bullets, ammo, like arrows, or bolts from crossbows. So you have proficiency with them to activate their skills, and so you'll just straight up gain these items as well. So you have to buy them. What an assassin will do in combat. The assassin hides in the rafters, waiting for the perfect moment for the guard to change out shifts. The Dragonborn's target comes ever closer as he dips several bolts in poison. He then initiates on his target, shooting down 2 poisonous arrows from his crossbow, succeeding and dragging the body into a storage closet to disguise himself to end his shift. So what's actually happening here? We're gonna make a small change, boosting charisma over wisdom. So the assassin hides stealthily, same stealth as always. They dip before combat starts, but normally be a bonus action. They're going to dip 2 of their bolts in the poison, giving them an extra poison damage. So then he initiates, alert, last time, with his hand crossbow, so he rolls at advantage because of the assassinate feature. That'll proc his sneak attack. So he will have a d6 from his hand crossbow, 2d6 for sneak attack now that it's been upgraded, 1d4 from the poison, 3 from his dexterity modifier, and then 3 from his assassinate rogue level. So it'll give us a total damage of 20. And then on his bonus action attack, which we didn't take because we did poison before combat, he will also roll advantage, giving us just an extra small 4 damage. He doesn't need to vex his target this turn, but just keep in mind the crossbows will be able to vex in the future, outside of like round 1, because you don't really need it. So he succeeds, and he disguises himself using the makeup kit. And since he has both expertise in deception and I think that's the word description, isn't it? Yes, it is. Anyways, since he has expertise in deception, and proficiency, he gets an advantage, given the rules, how they work. 17 to disguise himself fully, straight up beats the low DC 10, and he becomes the guard, staking out for them to find it out later. So, the Soul Knife. This one I highly enjoy. So, first off, you get your psionic power. This is not everything, by the way. There's another page for this one. You get your psionic powers. As you get psionic energy die, it's a D6 to start, and it will scale to a D12 at higher levels. Your total is 4 at the moment because it is your proficiency bonus. Time is 2, so they'll end up being a 12, scaling up in the late game. And in addition, when you take a short rest, you can gain 1 die back, and you'll gain them all back on a long rest. So, Psi Boosted Knack. This is how you can use to spend your psionic powers. On a failed ability check, with a skill or a tool, which you have proficiency in, you can roll a psionic energy die, and add that number to the roll. If it succeeds, great. If it doesn't succeed, it is not expended. It's also fantastic. So you don't lose that. You don't lose out if you fail a roll. Then nextly is your Psionic Whispers. You get 1 free use per long rest. But within 1 mile, you can telepathically communicate with a number of creatures equal to your proficiency bonus. And then the dies roll per hours. And that's how long this feature lasts for. As a star for the 6, it'll go to a 12. But this can be somewhat inconsistent at the time, but I don't think you'll need it longer than an hour. And then finally, the bread and butter, the psionic blades. They're simple melee weapons with a throwing property. They deal 1d6 plus dex psychic damage. They are finesse, so they can be used with dexterity. So they can also be used with strength, but again, you're mostly going to be doing dexterity. They can be thrown to a range of 60 and 120 feet. That's a big range. That's a huge range for throwing weapons. It's even more than the hand crossbow. We have the Vex Mastery, which you also get access to. So you have the mastery for the blades. And after you attack with the blades on your turn, you could make a second attack, melee or ranged, with the second blade. The only thing is that the damage is down to D4. It still adds a dexterity modifier to it. So that is nice. I did a big oopsie when it comes to the Soul Knife, and I had to rewrite this whole scenario and these scenarios for level 4 and 5. Good on me. Okay, so Soul Knife has been scouting ahead of his party, keeping in touch with his psionic whispers. Unfortunately, he's been caught out by a hungry beast. He steps back, trying to calm the wolf down, nearly tripping down the mountain if it weren't for his psi-boosted knack. The wolf approaches and snarls at him, initiating combat. The Soul Knife gets the edge, summoning his psionic blade. He strikes true, vexing his target, and with his other psionic blade, he finishes the beast off. So he finishes the beast off with the psionic blade. He reports to his party that the path ahead is clear, but just to watch your step. So what is actually happening here? I, again, have changed the stats around to be more of an intelligence-based build. This is to get True Strike. There's a reason why I've picked elf in general, but high elf will give me extra strike, and that's part of why I've done it, because we need true strike for this Psy Warrior. I'll get into why at level 5. So, Psychic Whispers use telepathic communicate with allies within a huge radius. Then going on to Psy Boosted Knack, this is to be able to boost his what would be a failing acrobatics check, which would have been devastating. So he adds so he rolls like 5 plus 5 gets 10. But with the Psy boost, on average you go to 14, passing the DC of 12. Nice there. Initiative rolls. You should have alert back if you're not an elf and you want true strike still. You could probably get the magic initiate, but that'll lower your initiative. But it might be worth it. Again, true strike. Trust me, it's gonna be worth it for Soul Knife. So Soul Knife gets the introvert's foes. So he strikes true with true strike. It doesn't do much at this level. Just it's 7 radiant instead of 7 slash piercing. And then he makes a second attack roll with his offhand as a bonus action, and that's Vex. So that's where you see these numbers here. And the second blade, like mentioned previously, it's a D4, but it still gets the proficiency bonus of 3. That's very important. And he reports back. So that's what Soul Knife will do in combat. 1 strike with the main action and a 2nd strike with the bonus action, getting the modifier with it. Okay, the Thief. The Thief has fast hands, which will make, as a bonus action, you can do one of the following. You can make sleight of hand checks to pickpocket, to lockpick, or disarm traps. You can use the utilize action on any item, such as any kits, ball bearings, caltrops, grappling hooks, hunting traps, manacles, oils, ropes, and spiked irons. I've listed out the good options there. Or you can take the utilize action on a magical item, wands, charms, bags, and then spell scrolls, but that's only at level 13 when you get the ability to do that. But lots of other magical items as well. And sorry, it's not the utilize action, it's the magic action we have for smaller actions you make. So second story work. You gain a climb speed equal to your movement speed, and you can determine your height distance based off dexterity. A nice little roleplay feature, but you can use that climb speed in combat if the situation arises, which in this one it does. So thieves in combat. The veteran comes rushing through the double doors into the master's collection. Unknowingly, he slips and falls on a few hundred ball bearings. He has fallen prone, and he's vulnerable to our little thief, who walks past him, clocking him at the back of his head with the blunt side of her short sword. However, it is not enough, so she spends up to half her movement evacuating. Veteran tries to take this opportunity to pathetically poke her with a spear, but to no avail. She uses her fast hands to work as she throws the grappling hook 15 up, smashing through the skylight and climbing the rest of the way up quickly. And the frizzled guard gets up and tries to follow her, climbing up the rope slowly, as she sends it loose, sending him tumbling down. What is actually happening here? First, the rogue has placed a trap of ball bearings outside. The veteran has failed. So they have fallen prone, which will give disadvantage for attack rolls, and the enemy advantage for attack rolls and melee range. While he's fallen vulnerable, the thief walks past him. She takes a stab with sneak attack. 19 to hit on average, 14 on average. However, it's not enough to knock him out, so she goes for the escape using her fast hands to send a grappling hook up. Sorry, she walks away first. Opportunity attacks with disadvantage, so miss. Then she uses her fast hands to hook up the grappling hook, which has a range of 50 feet at maximum. An acrobatics check of 13 to hook onto something, which she succeeds. And then she climbs with the rest of her movement speed up that 15 feet through the skylight. Because she has a climbing speed thanks to second story work. And then the rest is story text. So at level 4, you're going to get ability score improvements or feats. The two I recommend are dexterity and intelligence, depending on what build path you're going to. But overall, I recommend getting feats to start up first. Good ones include crossbow expert if you're going that build path, dual wielder if you're going in more of a melee. A melee. It doesn't actually have to be two-handed for dual wielder. You can just use a single hand, and this will still work as intended. Funny enough. So it's pretty good for the thief, and I'll show you that later. Fey touched if you want to start doing a lot of teleportation, and just a little bit extra magical support. Mage Slayer is fine, and so is Piercer. They're not the best, but they could be good options depending on what campaign you're playing. Same thing with Skulker. Skulker, I would say it's the one that gives you a bonus to your hide decks and other things to do with that. So if you really want to be very sneaky, then get Skulker. And then Speedy is more of your running gun, giving you mobility, giving you disadvantage for opportunity attacks. If you want that playstyle. So these are more like a playstyle feats. And then if you want to do something wacky and something very good, Gunner, you can get guns and they work with the rogue weapons for sneak attack. If your GM allows, this is an older feat. And another reason why we chose Elf earlier for some of the subclasses is for Elven Accuracy. This turns your advantage hits into super advantage by giving you an extra D8, an extra D20 that you can re-roll your lowest D20 on. So yeah, it's just rolling 3D12s, 3D20s, 3D20s are taking the highest. Then at level 5, they get Uncanny Dodge, which allows you to use your reaction to have an attack's damage that is an attack roll against you. So that's the only thing. It's pretty good. And a good use of your reaction. Then in addition, there is the Cunning Strikes option. So on a sneak attack, you can apply these Cunning Strikes, but you have to get rid of their cost. At this level, they only cost a d6. But the higher Cunning Strikes, as you progress, will cost more than just that. The DCs for these strikes are going to be 8, plus your dexterity modifier, plus your proficiency. Poison, pretty good one. This will be a Constitution saving throw, and on a failure, the target has a poison condition for 1 minute, and this roll is repeated at the end of their turn. Trip attack, dex save, or they fall prone. We've already covered what prone does. What poisoned does will give their attacks disadvantage, and their ability checks as well. Very brutal to the enemy. So it's a very good little thing to get on them. And withdrawal, you can disengage and use up to half your movement. I don't think you'll ever really use withdrawal. I think it's more trip and poison, which is going to be a lot more prominent. So in combat, this is going to look a little differently because I had to change this up. Okay, so what an Arcane Trickster wants to do is first off, have your familiar in battle. It'll give you the help action to give you advantage on your attack rolls, especially that one that you're making with True Strike. Now that we're level 5, it's gotten its bonus for the classic cantrip scaling. As for other things you can do with your bonus action, is you could have casted Witch Bolt on a previous turn, and then repeatedly use that bonus action to deal a consistent damage. So what I've gotten here is that we use the familiar to give yourself the help action, giving yourself advantage on your next attack roll. You've already casted Witch Bolt previously, giving you a use of your bonus action. You cast 2 strike on your hand crossbow, and that also gives you sneak attack. Shoot it, and then with your bonus action, use a witch bolt on the same target. This will deal 5d6, 1 from the hand crossbow, 1 from the not 2, 1 from the true strike damage, and then the other 3 from sneak attack. D12 will come from witch bolts, and then your modifier will come from the hand crossbow damage of 4. This will give you 26 damage on average. Now, keep in mind, on the first round, you would have had to cast witch bolts, which would have only done 13 damage for that round. It's a little bit. It has a better consistent damage after, but not on the first round, clearly. But this will be good done with your bonus action at that time. As for the assassin, you want to take... Oh, and elven accuracy is important here because you really need to hit that first strike. So having 3d20s on that roll will make it highly accurate. Following up, we have the assassin. Crossbow expert is highly recommended because of the way I've been building it. So you want to have previously dipped your bolts in poison. As your assassin, again, you want to set up for combat. So during the first round of combat, you will use your action and shoot with your hand crossbow. I just realized crossbow is misspelled to crowbow this entire time. Well, we're going with that. We're using our hand crowbow. Okay, anyways, our hand crossbow. And dealing sneak attack damage because we have advantage from assassin. And then our assassinate bonus damage from assassinate. And then with our bonus action, we're shooting a second hand crossbow. Now we're only using one hand for this with our drawing and shooting it because we need a free hand to reload the crossbow bolts. Or else they're not loaded on our next turn. But they're automatically loaded as part of the action. We just can't fire them twice because we don't have the... Well, actually, technically they are because we have the feat for it, but we don't have a second attack, so it doesn't matter. That's what's more important. We only have one attack and one bonus action attack. So, all this being said, it'll deal 5d6 damage on the first turn and a 2d6, 2d4 from the poison. Sorry. 5d6, 3 coming from sneak attack, and 2 coming from each crossbow shot. The 2d4 is coming from the poison damage, and the 13 here is coming from both hand crossbows allow you to use their ability score modifier because of the crossbow expert feat. So that's 8. And then the other 5 from the 13 is coming from the assassinate feature, which is your rogue level of 5. So on average, you're going to get 36 damage on the first round of combat if you have all this set up. After that, your damage is going to go to the consistent 25 because you don't have the poison nor you have the assassinate ability. But 25 is still respectable. On to the next is going to be the Soul Knife. Much like the Assassin, it's pretty simple. Use your action to cast True Strike, and then your bonus action to cast the other Psionic Blade with Sneak Attack. So you vex the target with your first attack. This attack will deal 27 on average, but stay that way and has no consistent material cost. It will always be it will always deal a consistent amount of damage without needing to do extra resources. So it's the most consistent damage dealer of this entire group of rogues. And it has the best range. The blades go out for 60 and 120. So you have the best range out of all these rogues as well. So what's breaking down here? We have both of the blades. We have the first blade, which is 1d6 from the blades damage, and then 1d6 from True Strike's damage. Then we have 3d6 for sneak attack, and then we have an extra d4 from the second blade's attack. Note, this does actually work, because you have to had attacked with the psychic blade, which you did, even through True Strike, you've attacked with it, for the second's follow-up blade strike to attack. That is the only requirement for the second psychic blade attack. Now, what is different is that this attack is made with intelligence, and this attack is made with dex. So, the number's a little bit off here, but that's why Elven accuracy is so important for this build, I find, is that you want to really hit with the second attack, because you're using your dex, which is a little bit lower than your intelligence. But again, you're doing it with 3d12, 3d20. So you have a high likelihood of hitting that sneak attack off. So yes, and then the bonus damage here is 4 from the intelligence from the first attack, and then 3 from the dexterity from the second attack. So a nice consistent damage, multiple ranges. Finally, Thief. I recommend the dual wielder feat, maybe. Not all the time. I think it's a good feat, but after looking at these builds, might not always be necessary. Especially since, yeah, well, I'll get into it why. So, I have chosen the Dark Shard Amulet, and what that allows you to do is cast a Warlock cantrip. We have chosen Eldritch Blast. Surprise, surprise. It is only once a day, and it is a Arcana check of DC 10 to do, but I think that's pretty easy. Especially since you can give yourself expertise in Arcana checks some way to pass this stat. It's just, you'll be fine. This will happen most of the time. So we're going to start off with our bonus action, actually, with our fast little thief hands, and we're going to cast the Eldritch Blast, and then we're going to walk up to range, and then with our main action, we're going to short sword them, we're going to vex them, and we're going to then draw out our scimitar with that attack action. We are going to nick as part of the main action and get sneak attack from the vex. That will deal a whopping 33 damage. But we won't have the ability access to the Dark Shard Amulet next round. This will be made easier with other stuff such as wands when we go in the future, like a wand of arcane missiles, a wand of magic missiles. That'll be more consistent, and we'll have more uses of that per day. But it's a little bit too strong for our level currently, so that's why I did some of the Dark Shard Amulet. So we will do 2 damage. So 2d6. Actually, we'll do 2d6 from the short sword and the scimitar attacks. We'll do the other 3d6 from sneak attack. We will do 2d10 from Eldritch Blast, now at level 5, and then we'll deal 4 damage from our dexterity ability score modifier from the first short sword attack. Following rounds, we will be replacing the Eldritch Blast attack with just a bonus action short sword attack from the dual wielder feat, allowing us to make a second attack. It won't add our ability score modifier, so it'll come out rounding to 25, which is the same damage as the assassin. So yeah, that's what the... Now, keep in mind, this is all assuming everything hits. This is the damage numbers we're looking at on average. We might miss sometimes. We might actually have a pretty good track record of hitting. This is not deep. This is not damage per round. Okay, I misnamed that. It's supposed to be part 1. Okay. So now, how to counter everything I just taught you how to do. So key notes: don't always use the DM. Don't have a DM versus player mentality. This is only how to challenge the rogue player, or if the rogue player's actions in combat are getting stale, how to mix it up. So, the main source of every rogue's build's damage is going to come from sneak attack. For the most part, they should get this on every turn. That is very important. However, making it a little more difficult to obtain such a goal will lower their damage output. As mentioned previously, one single disadvantage will deny the rogue from being able to sneak attack for that turn. You can poison them, you can grapple them, you can knock them prone, and these are great ways for them to not get sneak attack. Normally, a rogue is weak to strength. That's their weak point. So picking enemies that require strength saving throws to apply said conditions are very strong. There's nice magics that'll apply restrained, um, uh, stunned or other conditions, or just big beasts that can grapple the rogue with a strength save. So these are easy ways to prevent the rogue from doing their main function. But again, don't always do this. This is like either a moment you want to make them feel weakness, or they're facing a boss. Like, don't do this every single adventuring day. Pick your battles wisely. You can surprise them. Rogues, whoops, are usually quick on the jump. And having them on the back foot instead of their enemies is a nice cunning way to start them off on the back foot. Higher skill check DCs. Even though they're all the experts, there's some things that just take time to overcome. So you can make the DC not somewhat impossible for their skill level, or you can just not let them roll at all. Some rogues might try it, even though you don't want them to do a certain action for it to mess up the story that you're all trying to tell the table. Having places, no place to hide. Some combats take place in open fields and grand auditoriums. Steady aim, more like sitting duck. A player can spend their movement. Player spends their movement, bonus action, and attack, all to just for that single advantage strike. They're the perfect targets for your bosses, or even a rush of minions. Speaking of rush of minions, uncanny dodge. Try having a reaction from a death by 1,000 strikes. It only works against a single attack action, not many. So that's a good way to get around that. And finally, cunning strikes, poison immunity, prone immunity, or having just a ranged attack in general will be able to ignore what kind of disadvantage they try to apply to their enemy. So, that is it. In conclusion, I hope you enjoyed my little slideshow on how to make things better for your rogue, or to challenge them in their own unique ways. I find it unfortunate that I've considered them to be the weakest class in 2024. Not by that much. Many players, new and old, tend to enjoy role-playing rogues, and as well in combat. So if you like the video, if you made it this far, or just like it if you want to, let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. And if you want to see more of this, subscribe and stick around. Have a good one.